Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel, Bachelor Nation News fans. The recording light blinked red in the corner of the studio, bathing the table in a soft glow that somehow made Cindy's palms sweat more than they should have. She'd been in this chair before. Bachelor Happy Hour had become almost like a second home for her since the finale, but today felt different. The producers had told her this interview would be intimate. What they hadn't said was that it would feel like opening a diary she'd kept locked for years. Becca, the host, leaned in with that knowing half-smile fans recognized from her own time on the show. "Cindy," she said softly, "everyone saw your journey play out, but we didn't see everything, did we? You've hinted at something more." Cindy exhaled, her heart pounding. She had practiced this in the mirror a dozen times, trying to make it sound casual, even witty. But now, with cameras rolling and memories flooding back, her voice came out quieter, trembling around the edges. "I guess," she began, "I didn't just find love on The Golden Bachelor. I found something I didn't even know I was looking for, a feeling I thought only existed when you're traveling or dreaming. I found home and vacation, both in Mel." The room fell silent. Even Becca's practiced composure wavered as she blinked, surprised. The producer behind the camera raised an eyebrow. The sound tech froze with his hand hovering over the board. Cindy smiled nervously. "Yeah," she said, half laughing at herself. "I know that sounds crazy, but it wasn't crazy. At least not if you'd seen what she'd seen. Not if you'd been there the night that Mel had pulled her aside under the vineyard lights, his hands shaking, his voice cracking as he said, 'You make me feel like I'm home and on vacation all at once.' That line had stuck with her. Back then, it felt like a throwaway, a charming, slightly corny Bachelor line. But weeks later, in quiet moments when the cameras were gone, Cindy realized Mel had unknowingly named the feeling she'd been searching for all her life. She leaned into the mic. "You know," she said, slowly, "I used to think love was about choosing between comfort and adventure. But with Mel, it's both." Becca tilted her head. "That sounds like something that didn't just happen overnight." Cindy laughed, the kind of soft, nostalgic laugh that tells you there's a story behind it. "No," she said, "it didn't. It started with a broken suitcase and a glass of bad wine." It was week 3 of The Golden Bachelor. The contestants had just arrived at a Tuscan-inspired resort in Napa Valley for the season's infamous travel week. Everyone was giddy, picture-perfect vineyards, golden sunsets, and the promise of romance. Cindy, however, was having a meltdown in the middle of her hotel room. Her suitcase, an old Navy Samsonite she'd had since her first trip abroad, had burst open on the flight. A trail of clothes, curling irons, and half-spilled toiletries littered the floor. And to top it off, her favorite dress, the one she planned to wear for the group date, had wine stains from an uncorked bottle someone had packed badly. "Great," she muttered to herself, sitting cross-legged on the carpet. "This is how I'm going home. Not because I wasn't romantic enough, because I look like I've been dragged through customs." Then came a knock. "Cindy," a voice called, deep, steady, unmistakably Mel's. She froze. Yeah, just a second." Mel opened the door anyway. "You okay? The crew said you hadn't checked in for dinner." He stopped short when he saw the scene. Open suitcase, crumpled clothes, the look of panic on her face. She expected him to laugh. Instead, he crouched down beside her, surveying the chaos with exaggerated seriousness. "Well," he said finally, "I've seen worse travel disasters. Once, I spilled espresso on a passport in Rome, spent 2 days in the consulate. Want help sorting?" She blinked. "You're going to help me fold clothes?" Mel grinned. "Hey, we're supposed to build connections, right? Consider this construction work." They spent the next hour sitting on the floor, folding shirts, laughing about airline baggage limits and swapping travel stories. Cindy told him about her first trip abroad at 25, alone, terrified, but exhilarated. Mel told her about losing his wife years ago, how traveling had been his way of filling the silence that followed. And then, when everything was neatly repacked and the room felt strangely cozy, Mel said it, quietly, almost to himself. "You make this feel easy, like I'm home and on vacation at the same time." Cindy's breath caught. At the time, she'd brushed it off with a joke. "That's your line for the next rose ceremony." But she remembered it now, years later, sitting under studio lights, realizing how prophetic it had been. The weeks that followed blurred together in a montage of laughter, sunsets, and those impossibly perfect Bachelor moments that feel too cinematic to be real. But in between the champagne toasts and camera cues, Cindy noticed the smaller, quieter details. The way Mel would always ask about her day when the microphones were off, how he would carry 2 mugs of tea instead of one, and how his eyes softened when she talked about her parents. She didn't know it then, but she was falling, not in the way the show framed it, with fireworks and orchestra swells, but in the slow, grounded way that sneaks up on you like dusk. Still, there was fear. Cindy had been divorced for nearly a decade, and though she dated, no one had ever made her feel both seen and free, and now millions of people were watching. Every doubt she'd ever buried about her age, her worth, her heart's resilience came roaring back under the harsh studio lights. One night, she found herself pacing outside the mansion, camera drones buzzing faintly overhead. Mel joined her quietly, hands in his pockets. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "When I first came here, I thought I'd be pretending to fall in love for TV. I didn't think I'd actually fall." Cindy looked up at him, her throat tight. "That's the scary part, isn't it?" He nodded. "Yeah, but maybe the best things are
After the show
supposed to
wrapped
scare
its
us a
finale,
little."
the cameras were gone, but the feelings hadn't disappeared. Cindy's life outside the Golden Bachelor set was quieter, more ordinary, and for a moment, she questioned everything. She had fallen for Mel, yes, that part was undeniable, but the world she had returned to felt so starkly different from the romantic, sun-soaked world of the show. Could she reconcile the two? Cindy had spent years building a life that was practical, steady, and secure. She had a job she loved, a small circle of friends who felt like family, and a little apartment in the city that smelled faintly of vanilla candles and old books. On paper, she had home, but with Mel, she had discovered something else entirely, a sense of freedom, joy, and spontaneity that had been dormant since her early 20s. That, she realized, was her vacation, not in the literal sense of a getaway, but in the feeling of being alive, fully, when she was with him. Her first post-show visit to Mel's hometown cemented it. They drove past rows of golden fields, stopping at a tiny roadside cafe where the locals smiled at them like they were old friends. He showed her his favorite hiking trail, a place where he said he came to think when life felt heavy. She had laughed at how easily he navigated the rugged paths, while she stumbled over tree roots. But every stumble was met with his hand ready to steady her, a silent promise that she wouldn't fall alone. It was there, on a quiet hilltop, bathed in the warm glow of a setting sun, that Cindy felt the truth she had been avoiding. She didn't have to choose between home and adventure. With Mel, she could have both. But the world wasn't so simple. Reality pressed on her in the form of social media speculation, family questions, and the subtle pressure of public expectation. People assumed the romance was a PR stunt, or worse, a fleeting experiment. The thought that she might be judged for loving fully terrified her. One evening, sitting across from Becca in the Bachelor happy hour studio, Cindy's voice softened. "I'll admit it," she said, glancing down at her hands. "For a long time, I worried that falling for Mel was irresponsible, that I'd be leaving behind the safe version of my life for a fantasy that might not last." Becca nodded gently. "And what changed?" Cindy's eyes lifted. "Mel did. He showed me that love isn't about giving up security or adventure. It's about finding someone who makes both feel effortless. With him, I can be myself and still dream. I can relax and still feel excitement. It's like coming home and going on vacation at the same time." A hush fell over the studio. Even the cameramen leaned in, silent witnesses to a confession that was as tender as it was rare. The unexpected proposal. The story didn't stop with words. One chilly evening in early spring, Mel surprised her with something that would later make tabloid headlines, a quiet, intimate proposal, far from the cameras, far from the eyes of millions. He took her to a small lakeside cabin he had rented for the weekend. Fireflies danced above the water, reflecting in the gentle ripples as they sat wrapped in blankets on the dock. He handed her a mug of cocoa, then took her hand in his, the familiar warmth anchoring her heart. "I know the world thinks this is all just a show," he said, voice low and sincere. "But Cindy,
I can't imagine my life without you. You are my home, and you are my adventure. Will you marry me?" Cindy's hands trembled as tears welled in her eyes. She laughed softly through her sobs, a sound that was both disbelief and relief. "Yes," she whispered, leaning into him. "Yes, yes, yes." It wasn't a cinematic proposal with fireworks or cameras. It was a real, unpolished moment. And that made it perfect. Cindy realized that this was the essence of what she had been trying to explain in that Bachelor happy hour confession. Love wasn't a choice between comfort and thrill. Love, the kind that lasted, could be both. The confession goes public. When Cindy recounted the story on Bachelor Happy Hour, the audience reacted with a mixture of cheers, gasps, and applause. Fans were enchanted by the idea that someone could find both home and adventure in another person, a paradox made real. "I wanted to tell the world because I think so many of us grow up thinking we have to choose. Choose the safe path or chase the excitement. But what if you didn't have to? What if the right person could make you feel all the things at once?" Her words resonated far beyond the studio. Social media exploded with hashtags like home and vacation, Mel and Cindy, and Bachelor Confession, as fans shared their own stories of love that surprised them. Articles appeared the next day declaring Cindy's confession the most honest and inspiring moment of the season. Behind the scenes, Cindy felt a quiet satisfaction. She had been vulnerable, had shared her fears and dreams, and now, for the first time, she felt a complete alignment between the life she had and the love she had found. And yet, even with her heart full, Cindy knew the journey wasn't over. Life, like love, always demanded attention, care, and a willingness to embrace the unexpected.
Sun dipped over the horizon, casting a warm, honeyed glow across the terrace where Cindy nervously stirred her cocktail. Her fingers tapped a quiet rhythm on the glass, betraying the storm of thoughts inside her head. To the outside world, Cindy seemed calm, composed, yet anyone who truly knew her could see the tension behind her poised smile. Tonight was no ordinary night. This was Bachelor Happy Hour, a casual yet intimate gathering designed for contestants to open up in ways the cameras never caught. And Cindy had a confession, a revelation that would surprise everyone, including Mel. From the moment she met him, Mel had intrigued her. He was kind, attentive, and had an energy that made even the most mundane conversation feel extraordinary. There was a warmth about him, a sense that he could make any place feel like home. But as much as Cindy felt drawn to him, she had always struggled with balance between the comfort of routine and the thrill of adventure. Could she have both in a single person? Tonight, she would answer that question. The spark. Cindy recalled the first night she met Mel. The rose ceremony had ended and contestants were slowly filing out, nerves etched on their faces. But Mel hadn't rushed. He had lingered with a gentle smile, eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Hi, I'm Mel," he said, his voice steady but soft. Cindy had laughed at how ordinary it sounded, yet somehow extraordinary it felt. There was no pretense, no calculated charm, just genuine warmth. And from that first conversation, Cindy felt the unmistakable pull of connection. Over the following weeks, they shared stolen moments, walks under starlit skies, quiet chats in corners of the garden, and long talks that stretched into the night. Each interaction revealed a new layer of Mel, and slowly, Cindy realized that her heart was more entangled than she had anticipated. The dilemma. But love, Cindy realized, was rarely straightforward. She loved the comfort she felt around Mel, the sense that she could truly be herself without judgment. But she also craved freedom, adventure, the feeling of exploring something entirely new. Could it take her weeks of reflection to understand that perhaps the dichotomy she feared wasn't a dichotomy at all? What if she thought Mel could be both her home and her escape? Could one person embody stability and spontaneity? Tonight, she would answer that question. The confession. The lounge was buzzing with soft laughter and clinking glasses, a comforting hum that seemed almost cinematic. Cindy took a deep breath, feeling the weight of anticipation settle on her shoulders. She found Mel across the room, and their eyes met. That familiar spark ignited, a private world shared between them amid the chaos. "Mel," she began, voice steady despite the racing of her heart, "there's something I've been wanting to tell you, something I didn't realize I could feel until I met you." Mel tilted his head, curiosity evident in his eyes. "I'm listening," he said. Cindy smiled, a mixture of nervousness and relief. "You've given me something I didn't think I could have. With you, I feel at home, but also free, like I can be grounded and adventurous at the same time. I've never met someone who could give me both, and it's surprising." The words hung in the air, delicate yet powerful. Cindy's gaze searched his face, hoping for understanding. Mel's smile grew, slow and warm. He reached across the table, his hand brushing hers gently. "Cindy, that's incredible. I've been feeling the same way. You make me feel like I can settle in without losing my sense of adventure. I think we've both found a rare kind of balance." Cindy's chest tightened, not with fear, but with pure, unfiltered joy. She had taken a risk, and it had been met with resonance, with truth, with the potential for something extraordinary. Finding balance. The next few days were a blur of laughter, deep conversations, and moments of quiet contentment. Cindy found herself exploring new places with Mel, hidden beaches, quaint towns, and local cafes, while also feeling the unparalleled comfort of simply being together at home, cooking, talking, and dreaming. It wasn't always easy. There were challenges, moments of doubt and miscommunication, but each obstacle reinforced the realization that love didn't require compromise of self. It required understanding, trust, and the willingness to grow together. Cindy discovered that with Mel, she could have both, the exhilaration of new experiences and the serenity of belonging. And more importantly, she learned that sometimes the most surprising confessions reveal the truths we've been seeking all along. A new chapter. On the final night of filming, under a sky painted in shades of violet and gold, Cindy felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had risked vulnerability and been met with reciprocity. She had confessed her heart and found that Mel's heart mirrored hers in perfect harmony. "Thank you for being both my home and my vacation," she whispered, resting her head against his shoulder. Mel kissed her forehead softly. "Thank you for trusting me with your heart." In that moment, Cindy understood that love wasn't about choosing between two extremes. It was about discovering someone who could embrace all the facets of your soul. And in Mel, she had found that rare, beautiful balance.